Welcome into the doors of psychic experience and star people. Thank you for tuning in. Ask and you will be given what you asked for. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be opened. For everyone who asks receives. Anyone who seeks finds. If only you will knock, the door will open, and the truth within your higher self will be revealed to you. Come with us now and go with us where angels come, and so can you.
Welcome to our show, Psychic Experience and Star People. It's being presented by the First Spiritualist Church in San Diego, which is 1 block south of University Avenue in the City Heights area. We're the church where angels come, and so can you, any Sunday. I am Reverend Doris Horvath, the co-producer and your host. The contents of this show are metaphysical, spiritual, and educational. If you're looking for a church that has unusual vibrations, the First Spiritualist Church may be your answer. We have very different approach to religion. We believe in life after death, the continuation, and communication with spirit after death. Our church is also a healing church, as well as a teaching church. Every Sunday morning we offer oral healing, spiritual music, and interesting, enlightening lectures, followed by spiritual psychic messages. In the afternoons, to go further, we have a delicious lunch, we have workshops, sometimes we have movies. If you're looking for something different than the fundamental churches have to give you, this may be your answer. We also have a children's lyceum the first Sunday of each month from 10:45 to 12:30. And you can come any Sunday to the City Heights area. And please look in your phone book for the church or myself, or write down the phone number we're going to give at the end of the show. Now, we have very interesting guests on our show. Tonight we have Rob Baldwin. I'd like him to say hello to the audience before I read about him so that you'll get to know who he is. He's sitting
Hello,
right.
Reverend Doris. I'm right here. And
okay.
It's really good to be here with you.
Thank you for making us happy that you are. I'm going to be telling our audience a little bit about you, and then we're going to go into some questions so our audience will know exactly why you're here today. So first of all, I'd like to talk about Rob Baldwin as his moving here from Ann Arbor area of Michigan to San Diego in 1970. He obtained a BA degree in teaching and teaching credential in business administration with dual and minor in economics and psychology. Shortly after arriving in San Diego, he went on to acquire a master's degree in administration, both business and public. He worked with the Department of Vocation and Rehabilitation as a peer counselor for 4.5 years and simultaneously gained his real estate license. At this juncture, he went into business for himself and quit working for the state of California as a rehabilitation counselor. During Rob's early childhood, he had a number of very different experiences. One can only say were in the metaphysical realm. For instance, he had his first UFO encounter and brushes with the otherworldly aspects of this and other dimensions. He has been and is currently the host of the wildly popular local Cox Cable program, Journey into the Void. He was also director of the San Diego UFO Society for 10 years and continues to speak out on related subjects to this day. We'd like to welcome Rob, and we're going to be going into a question and answer time now. Is that okay with you?
Sure, let's do it.
Before we do that.
Let's talk.
Today I believe our topic is going to be chemtrails. And Rob knows a lot about this, so let's ask him, what are chemtrails?
Well, we can call them stratospheric geoengineering as well. But chemtrails are a phenomena that's been fairly new on the scene, probably since I know about 15 years. And so, yeah, they first started out. They were first recognized up in the Northwest, in Oregon and Washington State, and they were described as something like angel hair or fiber, some kind of a white milky fiber that would dissipate when you touch them. And people were really puzzled by what they saw, and they were very gossamer and ephemeral. They would land and be there for a little while, and they would disappear, and nobody could ever get any samples for them. And so that whole thing has been evolving over the last 15 years.
Weren't they something that was sort of gooey and sticky that people couldn't figure out what
exactly
it was?
I mean, there was all sorts of ideas about what they might be, but as I said, they've been evolving over the years, and so now we have a clearer picture of exactly what they are and maybe even what they're for and so on.
So you're saying that chemtrails started being noticed about 15 years ago.
Well, that's when I became aware of them. I'm sure, I don't know how long they've been around, but that's when I became aware of them. And I've been sort of on this field, this metaphysical field and UFO field for a long time, and they sort of came on the scene about then. There was a fellow by the name of Clifford Carnicorn, who was a GS-15 biologist, and he started talking about them years and years ago. And there was another fellow just before him. His name was Ken Thomas, and he was talking about them. They were both from the Northwest as well.
All right. Well, I remember when I was living in Vancouver, Washington, I remember seeing chemtrails.
Yeah.
Yes. I didn't know what they were.
Right. Well, I mean, look, as a kid, I mean, we all know what clouds look like, right?
Yeah.
But they've changed, and I think if the audience is really is honest with themselves and perceptive and want to take a few minutes and watch the skies for a while, they'll notice that the clouds are very different than they were when they were children, especially if they're 40, 50 years old.
What, in your estimate, do these clouds actually look like if someone was looking up in the sky and saw something different? What would that be?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. I mean, if you want to help you sort of get an idea of what they might look like, of course there are many different types of clouds, but the thing that distinguishes a cloud like a chemtrail cloud is the fact that number one, they don't last very long, and number two, when you see a jet plane going across the sky, and they're spewing out this material behind the plane, they used to be called contrails.
Right.
Now, in some cases, I think they still are contrails, but the difference between a contrail and a chemtrail is that the contrail dissipates much like a wave behind a boat. 10, 15, 20 seconds, and they should be gone. And but the chemtrail, on the other hand, that lingers, stays around, and you might see this straight line feather out like a gigantic feather duster or a big feather, and you'll see some very peculiar patterns in the sky. Normally clouds, are wherever they are. They're very non-organized. But the chemtrails tend to have some type of organization to them. And you can see, I've seen checkered crisscross pattern, big X's, circles in the sky. So for the folks that say, well, they're just contrails, not too many planes that I know of that are 35,000 feet fly in circles or make pretty X's in the sky. And there's the reason I think the X's are in the sky, by the way, are to catch the drift, so that from satellite you can actually see which direction the flow of the air is, and at that altitude so that they can, either move their spraying one way or the other.
Well, I see those where I live in Rancho Bernardo, and the funny thing about is, usually when you see an airplane going across the sky, if it leaves a trail after it, most of them are going in the same direction.
Right.
These come from this way,
Yes.
that way,
Yes.
and the weird thing about them is they sort of look like ladders because they shoot out on both sides. Other clouds don't look like
Right,
that.
right, yeah. They're very different if you pay attention to what's being laid down in the sky.
Why do you think they are in the sky?
Yeah, well,
I'm sure that people would really like to know why.
that's the million-dollar question now. After looking at it for years and years and years and talking to many people about it, there's a number of reasons. I have them written down here. Let me just go over a few of them here. Where's my notes on that? Okay. So here's what a lot of people would say they're to prevent global warming. Now here's what I know about. Here's what I know about when the government gets involved in something. They do it for many, many reasons.
And they'll make something up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they could indeed be preventing global warming with them. I don't know, but they're also can be used for instance, weapons. Weather weapons. I mean, you can cause drought in one area, you can cause flood in another, you can maybe even create tornadoes and hurricanes. Now, one thing that I know the viewers will note that in the last few years, the hurricanes, the tornadoes, the everything is being more catastrophic. The tsunamis. I mean, we're getting some very, very powerful, strange weather,
and
they're becoming in the category of 4s and 5s,
right?
Which used to be a once every 10-year thing. Now they're like every 2 or 3 of them every year. Now they could be doing research in just for atmospheric conditions. I'm sure that's part of it. Then some people say, well, they use them for communication. They call it over-the-horizon communication. They bounce. The HARP, you've heard about HARP, right?
I know about HARP.
Okay, so HARP is another thing you guys have got to look up. It's HAARP, and it's in Alaska, but they're all over the place. A lot of people just think the HARP arrays are only in Alaska, but they're everywhere. So anyway, they shoot this ray or this energy up into the ionosphere, which is covered with a chemtrail, which has a reflective property to it, being that it's comprised mostly of aluminum and other materials, and I'll get to that a little while later. They do what's called over the horizon. So when they want to communicate, they bounce the wave off, and it goes over the horizon to communicate perhaps with submarines, and that's also been talked about. And then there's this little thing about depopulation.
Oh yeah.
So many you have a nice program here. It's a spiritual program, but I got to say, I think part of this is depopulation.
I think so.
Yeah,
too.
and so a lot of people don't like to hear that kind of stuff, but indeed, I believe because the government always, when they do something with this type of enthusiasm and commitment, they always do it for a multiplicity of reasons, and I fear that depopulation is part of the problem.
Well, if that is part of the problem, then what are these chemtrails made of? What's their composition?
Yeah, well, again, they're made of many different things, but the main things that comprise the chemtrail is aluminum. And because aluminum has a very reflective quality to it, and if you talk about reflection and particulates and the effect that has, the particulate of aluminum is very small, it's very light, but it has an expression or a reflection quality of a particle much bigger, so you get a big bang for your buck in that regard. But other constituents of the chemtrails are barium, strontium, titanium, desiccated blood cells, true enough.
Yeah.
JPL8, jet fuel is a vehicle, kind of the emulsion that this stuff is sprayed out in. And of course, that's a carcinogenic in and of itself.
Yes, it is. Well, then what are the effects on us humans down here that are receiving all this stuff that's coming into our atmosphere?
Yeah, well, that old saying, "What goes up must come down," is certainly true here too.
Oh,
I'm
God.
afraid, Reverend Doris, and let's say that there's been a 200% increase of Alzheimer's disease in California alone. Now, for the last 10 years, the CDC has reported a massive epidemic of upper respiratory problems.
Okay.
You know, not to mention the problem with crops. I mean, what's going on here? The chemtrails, the aluminum turns into an oxide, which affects the small little animals and critters in the soil,
dear.
which changes the ability for a plant or a tree to consume the minerals in that soil. So what you're getting is a depletion of the ability of a plant to thrive, and also you know, the aluminum landing on pine needles and leaf materials and whatnot, and is acting as an accelerant.
Oh, no.
In these forest fires, you'll find out that in Arizona, they're having these tremendous forest fires that are just burning uncontrollably. Now, these used to be sort of a rare phenomenon, but not so much anymore because of the materials that are left on the plants themselves are causing part of the combustion or accelerating the combustion to a point where it's very difficult to control them.
Oh, dear.
On and on and on.
What do our weather persons on local TV say about these chemtrails, if anything?
Yeah, so you would think that the local meteorologists, I can't even say it, on our local channels would have a lot to say about these. And I have not had an opportunity to buttonhole one of these guys or gals personally, but generally when pushed to say something about them, they will say something like they've looked into it, they've gone to a government website perhaps. This is where you get this kind of explanation, where you have a mylar chaff, which was used in World War II. In fact, it was used a lot here on the West Coast to obfuscate and obscure planes and areas so that the enemy would not have a clear radar target, and it would be confusing for the radar folks. So, but you know, we're really not under attack presently, so probably the mylar explanation is not really a good one. And then there are some meteorologists that say, "What chemtrails? You know, I haven't seen any chemtrails. They look like contrails to me. Business as usual." I don't really think, Reverend, that they want to address this issue. I think, I think that somebody somewhere has put a flyer in their little box at the stations and tell them not to go into that subject.
I agree.
It wouldn't surprise me a bit, because these people should, of all people, know, or at least be able to give a plausible explanation for what this stuff is, right?
Well, that,
I mean, everybody's seeing them.
Sure. Well, what about our government when they're confronted about the subject of chemtrails? What, do they do anything?
Yeah, they do a lot. They do as much as they can to turn the conversation going in the other direction. In fact, there was a meeting here not too long ago. I don't know how many of you guys attended it out there. But anyway, it was an international meeting, and it was the American Association for the Advancement of Science. And I know that's all a household buzzword, but it was held right here in San Diego. And it was like about 2 years ago. But one of the primary subjects that was discussed was geoengineering. And in fact, that got a fellow by the name of Michael Murphy involved. He went down there, and he attended the entire conference, and he was absolutely amazed at what was being spoken about, because, I mean, let's face it, I mean, they're just among fellow scientists, and they're sort of dispassionate sort of folks, and, you know, they can keep, they don't really delve into the fact that, one of the issues that they hadn't really considered, actually, in this whole conference was the impact on humans. You know, for instance, if they sprayed anything in the sky, you know, what that would actually do. You know, that was one of their considerations they hadn't quite gotten to yet. But they were talking about the possibility, Reverend, of having to do this. So one of these fellas just happened to be at, and where is my note on that? At the Reuben H. Fleet Center about a month and a half ago. And what was his name? Oh, well, I better not use his name. That'll embarrass him. But he was a UCSD professor, and he was talking all about global warming and you know, all the possibilities. And they actually did touch on geoengineering. So like you know, a thorn in his side, I raised my hand and said, you know, I asked him about, you know, what I saw were chemtrails and all this sort of stuff, and he poo-pooed it and didn't say much about it. So I went home real quick and I got a DVD, and it was done by this Michael Murphy, and it's called "What Are They Spraying in Our Skies?" Now Michael, he goes into this subject really, really deeply. He's done a lot of work up in Mount Shasta area, and what he's found out there, oh, I need to talk to you about the Mount Shasta thing. First of all, a lot of people, and myself included up until when I heard this, considered Mount Shasta as this, in fact, you see it on bottled water. I think some of the Shasta water, they got this beautiful white dome, you know, coming up out of the earth there, and everybody sort of looks at it, the metaphysical community and the people in that area, everybody kind of almost worships this mountain as a reserve of a spiritual nature and pristine water and all this sort of stuff. So these guys, as scientists, went up there and took water samples, frozen water samples from Mount Shasta, okay? So here's what happened. The acceptable parts per billion of aluminum in I think a gallon or a liter of water is something like 1,000. Well, in our beloved Mount Shasta, folks, it was 61,000 parts per billion. That's right, 61 times higher than the acceptable federal levels of contamination by aluminum only. Of course, it had all the other bad stuff in it, strontium and cesium and barium and all that other bad stuff. But this is a problem. Now you see, when the mountain melts, this water comes down, gets in the streams, it feeds the lakes, it feeds the the fisheries, it gets into everything we eat. Now you start to see that the cycle of contamination comes to us. We are now part of the process, and we're being at the effect of this contamination. So not only do we get it, we inhale it through our lungs, we eat it on our vegetables. By the way, watch those strawberries. You gotta wash them very good. The leafy vegetables as well. The groundwater, for the most part, has not been contaminated, but you know, the lakes, the streams, the soils, this has been contaminated already by the chemtrails and the effluents from the chemtrails itself. Now, I know we're running short on time. I'll try to be
it's really
quiet.
disturbing.
Please ask me another question.
Very sad.
Okay. Yes.
Is our government hiding the chemtrail events then?
Yeah, they're. In fact, this Michael Murphy, he took several people and went to Washington, and he literally had to chase down anybody to talk to him. And most people hadn't heard about the chemtrails. Some had, and most of them that would talk to him were going to, in quote, look into it for him. And but for the most part, nobody wanted to hear about it. And so again, the people in Washington, what they're saying is they are considering geoengineering as a last stage possibility if in fact they can't get global warming under control. But in fact, we know, the audience and the crew here at this TV show knows very well that chemtrails are an ongoing event and have been for years. So again, we got this disconnection between perceived reality and what's actually occurring. So I'm sure that the politicians, they have this thing called plausible deniability. They don't want to be, I gotta tell you this. I know when we finally pull the rug on these folks and they have to admit it. We corner them, we get them, you know, to a point where they can't deny it anymore, what they're going to say, and you're going to love this, that it was all done for our best interest and for our own good. Don't you love it?
Oh, that's just really wonderful.
Don't you love it?
We have such a wonderful
They're
government.
they're so kindly. They think so much about us. It's nice.
They really,
it's comforting, really comforting.
They really care about our collective psyche,
they do. They
don't
love
they?
us. Yes.
Wow. Well, Rob, thank you so much for coming on our show today. And
you're welcome.
You're a very knowledgeable person on this subject. And I think it's very important that the people out there hear what you have to say, because they're not being told other ways.
No, they're not getting this information any other way. There are websites that'll deal with this. Remember Chemtrail, or you can call it Stratospheric Aerosol Engineering.
Oh, boy. Well, I want to thank our crew for all that they've done this evening to make this show possible. And I want to invite you to get a pen, some paper, write down the church phone number at the very end of the show, so you can call there, or else you can call me out of the phone book, and I can give you Rob Baldwin's phone number if that's okay with him.
Certainly is.
Okay, thank you for watching.
Thanks for being
God
here.
bless you all, love and light, and thank you so much. God bless. Bye-bye.